And good morning, everyone. Welcome to Unfiltered Vision News. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and I will be bringing you the news unfiltered this morning. Thank you so much for joining. Looking forward to today. We have a special guest on our Wednesday Women in Wellness, and I'm really looking forward to this guest and bringing her on. And I will announce her a little bit later, leave a little bit of a teaser. But let's get to this morning's recap. So yesterday I had a little bit of technical difficulty, so I was not able to finish what I planned to do for Tell It All Tuesday with the Fifth Amendment. We got through mostly the 14th Amendment, and I remember showing a video where this I want to say it's an attorney. I'm not sure, I forget which state he was out of, but he was discussing the 14th Amendment and how it was only applicable to descendants of slaves. And that's why it was written. It was literally written to make sure that the descendants of slaves remained citizens after those slaves got their citizenship in perpetuity. So he outlined that, and the ACLU is trying to use the 14th Amendment to justify birthright citizenship, where people think, okay, well, we can just come to the United States, have a baby, and that baby's a citizen of this country, and that's not true. And it's unfortunate because the 14th Amendment, even though it was meant for descendants of slaves, it has been used improperly and abused and actually has caused harm. Not so much in giving the descendants of slaves their citizenship, but the harm because other people having children here illegally, right? And then being told, well, you had your baby on this soil, therefore your child is a citizen of this country. And that's not what the intention of the amendment was for. So it was used out of context and abused out of context. And further insult to injury, a lot of these individuals are placed in the Black community specifically and given resources, as we saw the past few years under the previous administration. So it's not like we don't see it. We see it plain and clear. And so I wanted to finish and follow up because they're also looking at the Fifth Amendment to get to talk about due process, right? They're saying, okay, well, these individuals that are here, we want to make sure that not only do they have citizenship, if you threaten to remove them from the United States, that you are actually giving them due process. And here's my argument on that. The argument is, if you have come here legally, let's just say this argument, you come here legally, you get naturalized, and you have a child here that's a naturalized citizen. That's the legal path to go. But when you come here illegally, you have a child on the soil. Now, you've already committed a crime coming here illegally, but you want the laws to protect you. You're saying, well, we deserve due process. No, you don't. You're a criminal. You should be removed from the country immediately and not given any ability to return to the country because you've already committed a crime and you've already shown that you do not respect our country nor our laws. So done. It should be an automatic, you are not here. And so on February, I want to say February 19th of this year was the date, any child born here where their parents are not documented, which means they come here illegally and had a child on this soil, they are not recognized as citizens of this country. I'm in agreement with that, but I think we should take it back. I mean, a minimum of 15 years. And a lot of people will say, well, that's really cruel. No, it's not. You broke the law and you shouldn't be here. Now, the only exceptions for that is if someone was married to an American citizen and they had a child here, right? Or, and that's it. I mean, that's kind of it. It's like, marriage to an American citizen is the only thing that brings us together, because at that juncture, the person married to an American citizen, it legalizes them, right? They get their naturalized status, but the parent is an American citizen. So, you know, therefore that child would, be eligible for American citizenship. The problem is, what also was abused were government resources, our tax dollars. People were getting cash aid, and they were also getting food stamps. And we actually have a law in place. I might have to bring it up a little bit later. But in 1996, the government actually put forth a law stating that if you were to come here from a foreign country legally, not illegally, you needed to have a job. You were not allowed to be on any type of government assistance, whether that was cash aid, food stamps, or insurance. You needed to have your own ability to stand on your own as a naturalized citizen of this country, if that was your intent to come here and stay. So, of course, we know people overstayed their student visas, had children, got married, they just did whatever, just really not caring about the laws of this country, nor are politicians in office really enforcing those laws, right? But 1996 really set forth the precedent. No, you are not able to be on resources. Well, we saw over the past 4 years that the door was kicked wide open. They were not only offered those governmental resources, they were also offered low interest home loans. They were also offered business licenses to conduct business in our country without having any proper citizenship. And these things happened. And my whole thing is, we actually have lawmakers defending this, which is ridiculous. It's like, seriously, all of you need to go to prison. Every single one of you. I'm for that. You need to go to jail, because you set forth legislation that violated not only our Constitution, but just policy that was already in place. You just ran over it and didn't care. And these are the things that we really discuss here on Unfiltered Vision News. Thank you again for joining us. But let's go over the Fifth Amendment, and then let's get into the daily news. So just reading from the Legal Information Institute, the Fifth Amendment creates a number of rights relevant to both criminal and civil legal proceedings. In criminal cases, the Fifth Amendment guarantees the right to a jury, forbids double jeopardy, and protects against self-incrimination. It also requires that due process of law be part of any proceeding that denies a citizen life, liberty, or property, and requires the government to compensate citizens when it takes private property for public use. Okay, so that's kind of like the overview of the Fifth Amendment. Let's see what it says. So no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presumpment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. So that little slight in there that says without due process of law, this is where people are kind of hanging their hat on individuals that have been told leave the country or are under investigation for having children here illegally. They're saying, okay, well, there has to be some type of due process for these individuals, even though they're here illegally. It's like, no, this law doesn't apply to you. You're not a citizen of this country. Even though it says no person, we're talking about citizens. This doesn't just apply to anyone. The Constitution only applies to the citizens of this country. You walk across here illegally and you're not a citizen, you're a criminal. You get to go home. There's no protections for you. But there are states and there are people making money off of protecting said individuals with our tax dollars, by the way, because most of these are non-governmental organizations, which they call NGOs for short. So it's really sad and depressing that we have a legal system, and not only that, a judicial system and legislatures that are okay with people breaking the law and they support it, right? And this is Democrats and Republicans. Republicans are not off the hook because they're not standing up against this. I don't know when you saw the last press conference of a Republican saying, hey, this is wrong and we're going to get all of these people out of the country and we're going to make sure that the rule of law is upheld. I'm waiting for that press conference. Really, I'm waiting because you guys are really late to the party on this, literally. And you want the American people to support, the policies that you're putting forth, but you're not protecting the American people because you're not going after your colleagues in the legislature that have broken the law. Oh, that's right. This probably because you have to. And you would have to go to jail yourselves. It's terrible. It's wrong. And I'm really looking forward to 2026 and turning the tables and really putting people in office that care about this country and want to do right by the people in this country and not so much do right by their party. And with that, we'll take a short break and I'll see you guys on the other side.
At All Sides, we give bias ratings for hundreds of media outlets. By freeing people from filter bubbles and providing different perspectives, we can all be better equipped to understand the world and each other. So how do we do it?
And we're back. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Dr. Shakinoni Nichols, and this is Unfiltered Vision News. And we are back to discuss Trump. And I guess it's a baby idea to reverse the declining birth rate here in America. I saw a video earlier this morning, or maybe yesterday, and there was someone discussing how Trump might be using this to actually boost just the birth rate of white Americans. And so when this headline came up, I was like, well, let's check out if it's really specifically towards individuals that are Caucasian here in our country, or is it for everyone? Is he really looking at let's boost the birth rate across the board because it is declining? Unfortunately, we have millions of abortions here in this country, and we're not having children at the rate that we should to replace our population. And it's very unfortunate. So right now, it's an idea. It has not been put in place as far as an executive order, to my knowledge. But it said, could Trump's $5,000 baby bonus idea reverse America's declining birth rate? So it was just an idea. In late April, President Trump floated the idea of giving a $5,000 baby bonus to women who give birth. Many media outlets and commentators have been bullish on the idea, though some have expressed optimism. So Okay, so not enough. The Guardian, who left biased, reported speaking to several women who would prefer universal health care and cheaper childcare instead of a cash stipend. Savannah Downing, a 24-year-old Texan content creator, said maybe people will want to have children more often if we weren't struggling to find jobs, struggling to pay our student loans, struggling to pay for food. Madison Block, a 28-year-old product manager from New York, criticized Trump ideas, saying, "What have I seen online of the protagonist, movement?" Okay, I'm not sure about that word. Okay, it does seem very aligned with white supremacy because it does seem like a lot of the conversation around it is more geared towards white couples having more babies. Now Trump didn't say black or white. He just said women having babies. He just wants to encourage people having babies. Now, this isn't something outside of the norm. There's actually country, I'm sorry. I think it's either in the Netherlands, and they actually pay couples, not just individuals, but couples, a stipend to have children. And they also give them discounts on their house when they're buying a home, their car, if they have any child care, and also on tuition for their children. So they do the whole life cycle. It's not just, okay, I'm going to give you some money so you can have a kid. They actually follow this child's progression of life, and they give a benefit to a couple so that that child grows up in a two-parent household. I would like to see something like that over here, just for everyone in general, not just a particular demographic. Now, Fox, and their, I guess it's coming from a religious role, Fox News on the right, published an opinion from J.P.D. Gantz, led by criticizing Elon Musk, who has raised concerns over the declining birth rate for his polygamous solution and lifestyle. De Gantz juxtaposed this against the idea that for the fertility rate to increase, the baby bonus should be tied to Christian and family minded lifestyles to bring a civilization renewal. Well, now, look, we need to start having more children on less abortions, but that comes with what? Okay, when someone has a baby, what resources do they have if they have a lack of resources, right? And also, if a parent can't take care of themselves, how can they take care of a child? So there are some things that we need to basically, fix before we really start asking people to have children. People need to be able to live, right? You can't live in a $2,500 a month apartment if you're only making $12.50 an hour, and that's before taxes. I mean, the numbers just don't shake out. And you wouldn't want to bring a child into this world in that type of economic situation. But that's what you're asking. $5,000 sounds great, but it's not enough. It truly, truly isn't enough. And what is the benefit if it's not towards a family and people wanting to create a family? Are we trying to create more single mothers? Those are the questions that I have about the idea itself. And then notable past coverage. While many outlets from the left were pessimistic about the potential of the baby bonus, so was an opinion in the Telegraph that leans right, which claimed the data doesn't agree. Both Michelle Goldberg, left of the New York Times, and Hannah Grant, conservative, lean right, framed Trump's idea against Hungary's pro-natal policies, with Hungary conservative framing the incentives as successful and Goldberg framing them as mostly ineffective. And like I said, it could be effective if you're actually giving enough money for the life cycle of that child or at least giving a benefit to the parents, right? If you are a married couple and you don't have a baby yet, but you're going to have a baby, then your interest rates will be at a certain percentage, or you'll be able to qualify for a certain amount, right, with that loan. Those are actual solutions, and it would encourage people to get married, to have children. It would incentivize their lives. But if there's no incentive outside of just $5,000, that's not a big incentive in this world. I mean, yes, $5,000 is life-changing for somebody who might be in debt to put towards their debt, or they might be able to put it towards a down payment on something, but $5,000 isn't going to get you into a house. It's just not. $5,000 isn't going to pay for college for a child. It's just not. $5,000 won't even pay for you to have a child in a hospital. It's just not enough money in the economy that we have right now. So, like I said, I think it's I think the premise of where he was going was a nice idea, but it really is not helpful. I'm sorry. I mean, I don't want to be rude. I don't want to be mean, but it's okay. But it's not really going to fix a lot of what we need fixed. Let's just say that. And so, so people are still, I don't know, people are still reeling over this jet from Qatar with Trump. And I spoke a little bit about this yesterday. So here's the thing. When you are given any gifts, and I'm not sure all of the governmental restrictions being getting gifts, it has a cap, right? Dollar amount cap, but it's also the intent and who it's coming from. So if a terrorist organization wants to give you a jet, you can't accept it, right? You just, even though it's great, you can't accept it. And I know that's very extreme, and I'm kind of using it in this context, but you can't accept that. Now, from what I read yesterday, they it went through a vetting process through the Department of Defense, and the jet is only going to be used for President Trump during this time. Now, it could be seen as a quid pro quo, as a way of, purchasing influence, as they're saying here on the right, that Qatar has a history of buying influence in the United States. And they very well may have. But it's, how should I say, it's very interesting that they would, offer a $400 million jet now. Why didn't you offer this to Biden? Why didn't you offer this to Obama? But now you want to do this? It's just, it's a lot of money. And it wasn't just given to our country. It's not like it's going to be put in the rotation where any American can get on it and fly wherever. And I'm just saying that we do have some Americans that could afford to fly on a piece of aircraft like that. But the question is, are we going to allow other people on it? No. This is strictly for the administration that's in office right now. It's just not a great look. And that's no slight on the administration. It's just the timing of it coming in. Let's just say we're at the end of Trump's presidency, and this would be his last year. Let's just say that. It's 2028, and we're having the election cycle, and they decide to give this plane in July 2028. He's going out of office But they decided, we really just want to give you this plane. We think you've done a great job. America's doing great, blah, blah, blah. He's going to be out of office. He's not going to be able to use the plane after that. And he would only have a plane for a few months. I don't think anybody would bat an eye or really have an issue with that. But he just got here. He just got back in office. And there's a $400 million. Like, it reeks of conflict of interest. It reeks of quid pro quo. It just does. And it's one of those things you just got to do the Heisman on this one and keep it moving. You really do. You really do. So Trump's Middle East trip, investments in the U.S., and possible sanction cuts for Syria. Now, that's interesting that they would be thinking about sanction cuts for Syria. So President Donald Trump is visiting Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates, which they call the UAE, this week as he seeks deals and investments in U.S. aviation, defense, artificial intelligence, and energy. So the details is in one of the major international outgoings of his second term. Trump touched down in Saudi Arabia on Tuesday and announced a $142 billion agreement for Saudi Arabia to purchase U.S. weapons and other military equipment. Talks of a civilian nuclear program with U.S. technology are also in progress, an issue previously tied to Saudi Arabia establishing relations with Israel. The administrator reportedly hopes to secure $1 trillion in investment commitments from the country. So it's like, okay, guns for jobs or guns for investment. I mean, that's where we're at. That's what it says. So for context, Trump has been active in his efforts to attract investment to the U.S. since he won his second term in office last year. Before he returned to the White House, the president announced a $20 billion investment in the U.S. by DAMAC, an investment and property development company based in Dubai, UAE. So I remember him going over this. I think it was close to 500 billion that he was talking about. And those were investments of a collection of investors. I think there was somebody with car investments and technology investments and, just different types of investments where they wanted to come over here to the U.S., build up these companies here. So actually making things here and, manufacturing here. I keep saying that. It's like, because we don't really manufacture anything anymore. We're not manufacturing our own steel or copper. And if we are, it's on a very small scale. It's not on a large scale. And we really need to get back to making things. So how the media covered it, Fox Business, which leans right, emphasized the political economic benefits of the trip, and the Daily Caller on the right also drew parallels with Trump's 2017 Middle East visit, which resulted in diplomatic wins like the 2020 Abraham Accords. Now, NPR Left focused on the political implications of the visit, including Trump's announcement to end sanctions on Syria. Okay, it also mentioned Trump's personal ties to the countries. The New York Times, which leans left, also mentioned personal ties with outlets on the right. Mentioned personal ties while outlets on the right did not. And so this is really why I like reading you guys the news from all sides, so you literally can get all sides of the news, and we can dig deeper if we need to, or even bring up, issues that we can see from this. Countries are going to invest either way. I would definitely encourage anyone out there who's listening, check out C-SPAN for the speech that he gave on Tuesday in front of Saudi Arabia without any commentary. And that's why I recommend C-SPAN, because you're at least going to be able to hear it without voices in the background and it starting and stopping and people talking over the president, to really hear what he has to say and really take it all in for yourself where he's coming from. And with that, we'll be right back after this brief break.
The browsers of today are broken. They've been overtaken by a barrage of sneaky and annoying ads, trackers that follow your habits, and cookies that build profiles, and all sorts of other internet clutter that's taking precedence over the content that you want to see. In fact, these useless bites can take up to a whopping 50% of page load times, with a third of it anxiously trying to learn more about you. To make matters worse, some ad blockers are even letting ads through when large advertisers pay them. But do you really want a leaky ad blocker? It's because of these very reasons that we developed Brave, a new browser that kicks internet crud to the curb and makes it faster, safer, and better to surf the web than your current browser. With Brave, everything you need is built right in. We integrated technology that automatically blocks trackers, annoying ads, and shields everything that can cramp your style and destruct your privacy. With it, you can expect increased speeds nearly 2 times faster on laptops and up to 4 times faster on mobile. And unlike any other browser, Brave allows you to support your favorite publishers with automatic micropayments, so it's a win-win for you and your favorite sites. To top it all off, Brave is open source, because we truly believe it's our web and we need to fix it together. So ask yourself this question: do you want a web browser made for the internet of today? If so, try Brave. It's faster, safer, and ad-free.
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining us here on Unfiltered Vision News. My name is Dr. Shakinoni Nichols, bringing you the news unfiltered. And you just saw an ad from, it's called Brave, and it is a new browser, and I'm actually using it right now as we speak. Hopefully it will be able to keep up and it will do better than Google. The one thing I like about this is that it does block the ads, it saves data, and it get a way faster web pages, which you do, and I've really seen it for myself just by switching your browser. And the other thing that the ad didn't mention is actually you can get paid crypto for using the browser. So definitely check out brave.com when you guys get a chance. They've got great things going on: private search, built-in AI assistant, and a powerful VPN. So again, check out brave.com. And let's definitely get back into the news we were talking about in the last segment, the sanctions cuts on Syria. So, I mean, it's a good thing. I think so far, so good. You know, Trump's been in office a little over 100 days. Not everybody's completely lost their minds yet. But, you know, we'll have to see how everything shakes out. And like I said yesterday, I really don't think a lot of this is going to shake out until the, I would say maybe August, September. We might see some of this shake out to where it'll be a benefit for everyone. So I took a few notes. And I'm looking, it's like I'm looking here at my notes, I'm looking here at the news. Make sure I bring you guys what's good. Okay, so Hassan Picker alleges detention questioning by U.S. border agents. Interesting. I haven't seen this. Hassan Piker alleges detention questioning U.S. border agents. U.S.-born Twitch streamer Hassan Piker, also known as Hassan Abdi, claims he was detained and questioned at length by U.S. Customs and Border Protection officers upon his return to the United States from France. Interesting. So Piker, a Turkish-American left-wing political commentator known for his criticism of Donald Trump and support for Palestinians, stated in a live stream that he was taken to a detention room at Chicago O'Hare International Airport upon his arrival from Paris. He alleges that he was questioned for approximately 2 hours about his job, his political affiliations, his opinion of Trump, and any connections he might have with terrorist groups. So Piker has over 2.8 million followers on Twitch. He claimed the detention was an attempt to intimidate him and create an environment of fear to suppress opposition voices. Homeland Security Assistant Secretary Teresa McLaughlin confirmed that Piker was held for further inspection, but denied that his political beliefs triggered the inspection, saying, "Our officers are following the law, not agendas." Interesting. So on the right, it referred to Piker as a champagne socialist, liberal, loudmouth, and far left. During the stream, Piker, who has cheered both Hamas and Houthi terrorists on his platforms and repeatedly called for Israelis inbred, portrayed himself as bravely stonewalling the agent's questions. It said The Guardian left and the Washington Post left, quoted Piker's perspective. So, there's a lot of things that you can say and that you're allowed to say. But when you are talking about terrorist organizations, and even if you do say you might support them or maybe not, or however you go about it, yeah, you might raise suspicions with the FBI, with other agencies like Homeland Security, and they may pull you to the side and say, okay, we need to talk to you, because they need to make sure that you're not being used as an asset to, maybe tell trade secrets or whatever, what have you. I know he doesn't work in the government, right? We just saw that he's an influencer. But sometimes, even being an influencer, it can sway people to think a certain way, do certain things, and it could incite violence. So, yeah, you're going to be questioned. We do have freedom of speech in this country, but what people need to understand, with that freedom does come responsibility. You just can't say whatever you want to say, however you want to say it, and when you want to say it, right? Even though I'm here on Unfiltered Vision News, I definitely try to come from an unbiased view, right? I'm just giving you the information, and when I can, I try to dig deeper, right, with the facts, like we did, I want to say late last week, when we talked about the mayor from Newark, New Jersey. And I went forth and I pulled up the actual case and information in the case, right? Like, I want to say we are now at, I think they're still waiting for feedback from the other side. But, I was able to pull, one of the letters from the defense and read in there what was actually going on in the case. So those are things that I do here on this program. I don't want to just talk about certain things. I want to make sure that I'm giving you guys the backup and the resources that you need to make an informed decision about the news, because as you can see, the news is very biased. That's why I like reading the news to you guys from all sides, so you can definitely see that there are sway articles in our media, and it wants you to think a certain way when telling you about these news stories and information. So, yeah. I also wanted to talk about, and I didn't see this come up. Oh, I know what I wanted to address. And I've been thinking about this. I might even talk to my guests a little bit about this, but I wanted to talk about the Sean Diddy Combs trial. And the thing about it is they're going after him for sex trafficking and racketeering. I was like, okay, so you're going after him, very similar to what they went after Jeffrey Epstein with. But so far, everything that I've heard, and it's not great, right? And a lot of people that are in the entertainment industry, they went to some of these parties and they participated in some of these parties in this debauchery that went on. And I'm not trying to defend the debauchery. I just want everybody to know that I'm not trying to defend it. But legally, if grown adults want to participate in activity like that, that's their business. It's not our business. And for some people, it's like, oh, that's gross. That's their business. We're not involved in that. Now you've got to prove sex trafficking, which is a very serious allegation, right? Well, who did he sex traffic? Was he a part of, flying people in and out of the country to sex traffic people? I mean, that's what you're doing, right? Was he, did he have children that he was, selling to other people to have sex with? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Those are the gross things, right? And then racketeering. Was he involved in a situation where he was, blocking people out of, making money or making music, right? Because that's the predominant industry that he was in. Unfortunately, the lady Casey that testified against him yesterday, he promised her, like, she signed like a 10 record deal, which is, I heard someone say, look, unheard of. Okay. She signed a 10 record deal with him. She did write and she did produce some songs, and there were some songs that were released, but it didn't amount to 10 records. And then she was involved in this activity, right? And was she involved because she felt obligated, or was she forced to participate in said activities? And she's over 18, so she wasn't, underage that she couldn't participate in this activity, right? Was she being trafficked? If she wasn't being trafficked, okay, that doesn't apply to her. With the racketeering part, was she maybe stonewalled in the record industry where she couldn't, make music with other producers or get out of her contract? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, where is the actual crime that he's being accused of coming out? Because all I see coming out is a lot of, there were a whole bunch of people doing things that probably shouldn't have been doing them. But again, these are adults. And if this is what you want to participate in, if that's how you, in essence, get down, that's your business. So why are we here? Now, when we look at Jeffrey Epstein, on the other side of this, he had an island. And it was very well known that there were young women that were taken to this island, and they were sleeping with heads of state and, different royal people from the royal family. Like, we know that was happening. And they didn't bring up racketeering in Epstein's case. It was more focused on the trafficking of these young women, and more so pedophilia, right? Because they were underage. Some of these women were under the age of 18 that this was going on. And he actually had help with somebody else bringing the girls in, and then they would get the girls to bring other young children into this. So, the other side of that too is the people that were also participating. We're not talking about them. And there have been some names thrown out there that were participating in this illicit activity. Okay, well, did they commit any crimes? Were they involved in pedophilia? Were they involved in sex trafficking? Were they involved in the racketeering? I mean, those are the questions that I have. Because at the end of the day, if they didn't, but they were just getting freaky pretty much at these parties, and they were all adults, why are we here? And like I said, I'm not defending what's going on. I'm just saying, why are we here? Why did the FBI have to break in? Because you doing freaky stuff. You know what I mean? Like, Okay, so you're doing freaky stuff. Like, where is the federal crime that you've committed? That's all I'm asking. So it's going to be interesting to see how this trial plays out, and if they're actually going to bring evidence of substance to convict Sean Combs. If not, he'll be acquitted quickly because there'll be no evidence there. And are we just going to move on? Yeah, that. Are we just going to move on if he gets acquitted? That's my question. That's where I'm coming from. So let's check out this news story. I think this is interesting that a Democrat outs incumbent Republican in an Omaha mayoral race. These mayoral races have become very contentious and important in our country because at the local level, they do control the purse and they do really control what happens at the city level, right? With the commissioners, if they're called commissioners in some states like Chicago, they're called aldermen. So it's gonna, watch out for these mayoral races coming up, even where you're living. So Douglas County, Nebraska Treasurer John Ewing Jr., Democrat, has ousted incumbent Republican Mayor John Stothert. Okay, we'll go with that. In the latest victory for Democrats during President Trump's second term, Decision Desk HQ projects. So Ewing, who is a former deputy chief of police for Omaha, will become the city's first Black mayor. He denied Stothert a chance at an unprecedented fourth consecutive term in office in an election that was officially nonpartisan, but featured a Democrat and a Republican facing off against each other. Now, a lot of times with some of these offices, they say they're nonpartisan, but people's affiliation, which I think it's really silly. At this point, you might as well just let people, if you're a Democrat or if you're a Republican and you're running for office, I don't see the reason why they try to kind of hide, in essence, what your political affiliation is, stating that, you're a Democrat or you're a Republican. You can't say what you are. You're just going to run in this nonpartisan race. It's just, it falls flat. It seems silly to me. It does. It just seems, but that's just me. That's just my opinion. It seems silly. So let's see. Yeah. So the city hasn't had a Democratic mayor since 2013 when you make sure you guys are seeing what I'm seeing, and I need to make this a little bit bigger so those of you watching can see it. Those of you listening can continue to listening. This story is actually being covered by The Hill, and it said that the city has had a Democratic mayor since 2013 when then incumbent Jim Suttle lost his re-election bid for a second term to Stothert, Omaha's first female mayor, who has enjoyed comfortable electoral victories since then. Her closest race was in 2017 when she won by just less than 6 points. Okay, but Democrats were hopeful about winning the race and electing Ewing. The city of Omaha had the wider second congressional district in its part of have been considered a blue dot, where Democrats have found success in recent elections. Democrats have won the district's single electoral vote in 3 of the past 5 presidential elections, and they've engaged in competitive races for the district's House seat despite falling short in recent years. Both candidates focused on local issues like jobs, public safety, and affordable housing, but the race took on more of a national angle in the final weeks before the election, with Stallworth slamming Ewing over transgender issues and Ewan seeking to tie Stallworth to Trump. And the race came after a series of other state and local ones that have been viewed in light of the national context of which party may have the upper hand to win the general elections in November and next year's midterms. I know everybody's talking about midterms already. I'm like, Trump just got in office. It's only been a little over 100 days, and we're in 2026 already. We are in November of 2026. I'm just telling you right now, people need to get together, or it's going to be interesting to see what happens in 26. So Democrats notched a major victory in a Wisconsin Supreme Court court race last month, in which the liberal candidate comfortably defeated her conservative opponent. Democrat candidates in two strongly Republican leaning House districts in Florida that same night fell short of winning, but made both of their races much closer than would normally be expected. And the party up low-key, but still major upset wins in state Senate district in Iowa in January and the state Senate district in Pennsylvania in March. So Democratic National Committee Chair Ken Martin congratulated Ewing on his victory in a statement saying, "Voters want leaders who will govern for working families, which is why Democrats like him are winning up and down the ballot." From coast to coast, the blue to purple, even red states, Democrats are overwhelmingly outperforming Republicans in nearly every election held this year, as voters condemn Republicans' plot to attack Social Security and health care while hiking prices on working families every chance they get, he said. After tonight, vulnerable House Republicans like Don Bacon are on notice. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Because, yes, Republicans do, at times, they do go after the social programs. But like I read yesterday, and we're going to go over this, I think tomorrow, we're going to definitely take a deep dive into the big, beautiful bill and really see what's in there and what is going to be cut and what is not. And what's going to happen, because as I read yesterday, they actually increased Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. So they keep saying they're attacking Social Security, Medicare, and healthcare. So I'm like, okay, either I missed something or you're just gaslighting people. It's one or the other. But guess what? You know what? Here at Unfiltered, we're going to take the time to actually look at the information and see what the facts are, because this is a wonderful story by The Hill, pointing out the victory and, pointing out the other states where Democrats are voting well, correct, and winning their races, in some states becoming more purple than blue or red or to that nature. I just want people to do the best by their citizens. And right now, and this is where the Democratic Party is, like it or not, they support transgenders in women's spaces. That includes sports, that includes bathrooms, that includes jobs, that includes any area where it is specifically for women. Transgenders can now say, well, I'm a woman too, and invade that space. And they're not women. They're just not. And somebody might say, well, you're just being mean. I'm not being mean. I'm being truthful. They're not women. They want to be something that they will never be. A man will never produce ovum. He will never have eggs in his body. His body produces sperm. And if he decides to become a eunuch, and so his body will no longer produce sperm, that will be his choice, but that doesn't make him a woman. Nor can a woman ever produce sperm out of her body. No matter how much she mutilates it to replicate a man, she'll never produce sperm, ever. Doesn't work. That's not how this works. And people really need to come to reality with that. That's the reality. No matter how much you mutilate yourself, you're never going to be something you're not. Men, you're not women. Women, you're not men. That's it. And a man putting on a dress does not make him a woman. A man demanding that you call him a woman does not make him a woman. It doesn't. It makes you somebody that I have to really question, how should I say it? Your mental stability, because you're not a woman. And to that, we really need to look at, why don't you love yourself? Why do you insist on us wanting to call you something you're not? That, to me, that's always been the deeper issue with transgender. I feel sorry for individuals that don't love themselves, and they are determined to be something that they're not, to be loved, right? Or to accept themselves. We need to start out with the root problem. Why don't you love you? What is wrong there? We don't really stop and ask those questions. We just get right to, well, we just want you to be happy. So whatever makes you happy, do that. Well, by doing whatever makes you happy isn't happiness. I need people to understand that. That isn't happiness. That is an unfortunate pit of despair, because you're constantly searching for something that you'll never have. You'll never have that true happiness because you're not happy with yourself, period. And you need to get back to the why. Why did you want to change in the first place? And why don't you love yourself just the way you are in the first place? And with that, we'll take a short break, and I'll see you guys on the other side. And we're back. Thank you so much for joining us here on Unfiltered Vision News. My name is Dr. Hashaki Noni Nichols, and I will be bringing you the news unfiltered every day, 7 to 9 a.m. here on Unfiltered Vision News on the Let the Truth Be Told network. We have a very special guest that will be coming up here at about around 8:30, joining us this morning. But I'm just so glad for everybody joining us so far today. We've just been, looking at some of the top news stories of the day. And I'm using All Sides Media because I really like how they are looking at literally all sides of the media. And I wanted to pull up some stories regarding our economy, because we keep hearing about the recession and the tariffs, and the world is a dumpster fire. I'm just saying, yeah, it's bad. I'm not going to say it's not bad. And is it going to get worse before it gets better? Absolutely. But I'm really looking and hoping that our legislatures will do what's right. And tomorrow, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the big, beautiful bill that President Trump has touted and talked about, and just look at some sections in the bill, what I have access to, and just look at where we can see, okay, what will happen to us once this legislation is put in place. I really want to see if it's going to roll back some things that were put into the Inflation Reduction Act or into the CARES Act, or the legislation put forth with Build Back Better. What is it going to do to, balance that out? Because, President Biden, he had good intentions with wanting to use things like alternative energy. But the problem was we didn't have great sources of that energy that matched the coal and the gas in the same way. It was great, but it wasn't able to literally replace it, right? So in my opinion, they had good intentions. They just moved too fast. And, of course, the oil industry got scared. Prices went, outside of the roof. I think people were paying $10 for gas in California, and they don't have the digit marker even on gasoline stations to go as high as the gas was going. It was that bad. And so we really, I really want to look at this big, beautiful bill and see, what are you trying to get us into now financially? Is it going to really bode well for the American people? And should we be, making calls to our Congress saying, yes, support this? Or should we be calling them and saying, please don't support this? Or you might want to change this that's in the bill or change that's in the bill. And see, a lot of these news organizations, they're not going to go over that. They're not going to belabor the point. They're just going to, dish out their talking points because, yes, they are given talking points. They are. And they're going to keep it moving. They're not going to care. They're really mindless talking heads. And that's sad because I know a lot of these individuals have gone to school for years to make sure that they are top-notch, anchors, telling the news and delivering the news properly and reading the teleprompter. I have no teleprompter. It's just me spitballing. But they do. And so, no, I'm not downing their profession. But what I am saying is you're a mindless talking head. You're doing what you're told. You read what's on the teleprompter. You're not really giving people information that they can use. You're doing what you're told. And so here on Let the Truth Be Told, we are trying to give people the information that they can use. So with that, I'm going to look at a story, and it's Trump changes his tune on the economy. Now, this was on May 6th, so this was just a few days prior, but I wanted to take a look at this story because these are things that we need to actually look at that aren't necessarily being covered in the mainstream. A lot of times you'll see certain things, but you won't see everything. So let's check this out. It says, and this is center. So President Trump is changing his tune on the economy, suggesting that Americans should buy less and will probably pay more and bear the brunt of an uncertain economic landscape as his wide-ranging tariff policy takes effect. So again, this was just late last week, the 6th. It's the 14th. Okay. So it's about last Tuesday where he said this. So Trump and his economic team have for weeks said that tariffs would result in only short-term pain and that the tumult in the stock market would eventually level out. But the White House's messaging has evolved from Trump on the campaign trail promising to lower prices and make America wealthy again to Trump suggesting, let's see the rest of the story because now I'm bought in, y'all. I want to see it. Again, this is coming to us from the Hill. Let that catch up. No, I'm not going to show the video because a lot of times some of those videos don't always go with the article. So I want to keep it safe. So here we are, would eventually level out. And that's what I was saying before, some of this stuff may shake out, but I think it's going to take some time. But the White House's messaging has evolved from Trump on the campaign trail promising the lower prices to make America wealthy again to Trump suggesting the U.S. needs a cultural shift on consumer spending while accepting that his tariff plan will raise prices. Trump was asked Sunday by NBC's Kristen Welker if he would acknowledge that his tariff plan will result in higher prices. At first, the president suggested tariffs will make us rich, similar to sentiments he's expressed when touting his economic policy. But in the next turn, he suggested that American children, for example, do not need as many toys and that Americans do not need to spend as much money on junk we don't need. Okay, so I hear what he's saying. And what he's saying is, spend your disposable income wisely, right? If your child has, $15, I would probably say that your child is an enthusiast, right? I hope you guys can hear me because it's saying my browser has lost connection with audio. Trying to share my screen again. This stuff. All right, let me stop sharing and then I'll share again. But as I'm doing, I'll keep talking. But what we're talking about here is your disposable income. Let's just say you have a child that, just loves toys. And I think all children do, right? All kids like toys. But are we making the best decisions right now with the disposable income? Now, if they are a doll collector, right, and then the boxes don't get open, they're just set to the side because we know in 10, 15 years it's going to appreciate because this is more so an enthusiast hobby. It's a little bit different, right? But your disposable income right now, you might want to spend it more wisely. And I hear where he's coming from that. If your kid has 10 dolls, do they need 20? Or, can we look at maybe going to some place like the children's place? I think it's a consignment shop, and recycling some of those toys where you donate those toys, right? And you might get a few dollars off of those toys and then take that money and buy a new one, right? There's always ways to really be a better spender as opposed to just spending to spend. And I hear where he's coming from. But a lot of Americans, they don't really think about saving their disposable income or spending their disposable income in a necessary way, right? You don't have to spend it. You can put it back, into savings and making sure that if something comes up, you have those extra finances there. It does say that I think the average household has less than $500 in savings on average. But yet they'll buy their child that toy that they want. And I understand as parents, we want our kids to be happy, but that's just one example. And he was saying, I'm just saying they don't need to have 30 dolls. They can have 3. They don't need to have 250 pencils. They can have 5. Trump said, acknowledging the prices of such items could also go up. Okay, that's in stark contrast with candidate Trump, who spent much of 2024 railing against inflation under former President Biden and promising to lower costs if elected. In an ABC interview last week, Trump said his economic policy is what voters signed up for. Trump has in recent weeks acknowledged a little disturbance in the economy that emerged when his tariff plan was rolled out. When he was campaigning, Trump spoke frequently of tariffs on China, the European Union, Canada, and Mexico, but his policy ultimately imposed tariffs on nearly every country in the world, sending the U.S. and foreign stock and bonds market into chaos. Yeah, we lived through that. So Douglas Holtz-Eakin, president of the center-right American Action Forum, called Trump's messaging pivoting on an unpopular policy. This feels tone deaf to me. This is, you're too materialistic. You don't need as many dolls as you think. And he's a very strange messenger for that message. And I don't think it's going to sell. This is what Holtz-Eakin said. Mark Short, who was a top aide to former Vice President Mike Pence during Trump's first administration, warned that Trump's risks alienating people if he keeps talking about dolls, calling it a damaging message that suggests a little bit of an elitism perspective. Okay. Well, yeah, you got to remember people in his echelon, I should say, don't spend their money unwisely. They rarely spend their money, if at all, because sometimes people are just giving them stuff, right? People will just be like, oh, we want to give so and so this gift, or we want. Look, half the time they're getting swag anyway. They're always trying to figure out how not to spend money, right? Live off of the interest of their investments and save as much money as they can. People that are at his, and I want to say Trump's financial level, they're not out running around buying all kinds of cars and houses, and they're not doing those things. They may have bought them in the past and they're letting their assets appreciate. They've invested in stocks, and when those stocks pay out dividends, they live off of certain dividends and interest. We are not taught how to do that, even in its smallest measurement at our economic status. We're just told to spend, 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 consume, consume, consume. So when you hear the message like that from the president, some people are like, well, it just comes off as he's looking down on us. No, he's actually trying to give you some financial advice. Take it. You don't need to spend your money recklessly. How about saving a little bit of your money? How about keeping, a few of your dollars back? It's not going to hurt you. You might want to invest in crypto or invest in gold and silver on the stock exchange. And you can do that on your Cash App. You can invest maybe $5-10 a week and just make a commitment to yourself. You know what? I'm just going to put $10 a week in there. I'm not going to go, spend that on fast food, or I'm not going to go spend it elsewhere. I'm just going to invest. And then see how your portfolio grows. See, these are the things that we don't talk about and we're not taught. And yet, someone like our president, is an investor. He is a businessman. He has lived in the real world, I like to say, outside of some people in government who just got into government and then they just stayed there. And they never really looked at being a regular person, right, outside of the federal government who had to invest. And a lot of them do insider trading. Right? They actually write the laws that benefit the companies, and then they will buy stock in those companies when they know that their policies are going to shift the market. But yet they will call out Donald Trump for saying something. I'm not saying anybody's right, but I'm not saying they're doing it right either. And with that, we'll be back after this break.
All Sides has created.
And we're back, and thank you so much for joining us here on Unfiltered Vision News. My name is Dr. Hashaki Noni Nichols, and I will be your host from 7 to 9 a.m. Monday through Friday here on Unfiltered Vision News on the Let the Truth Be Told network. So I found this interesting article on birthright citizenship that reaches the Supreme Court. What's at stake? And so this was an article written yesterday. It is Rating Center. And as you saw from that brief commercial break that we had with All Sides Media, they tell the news from all sides, and you get to see it from all sides. And that's what I really appreciate, getting the content from here to read to you guys, and also showing you what I'm reading. I'm not just reading, I'm showing you. And so a lot of times when I am just talking, it's because some notes that I've, pulled up, and I'm giving a little bit of my commentary on that, like I did with the Sean Combs trial that's happening. And as the trial goes on, maybe I will pull some of the documents that I can and what can be shared within the public that's available to the public to really keep us focused on, why he's there, and the prosecution in how they are handling the case. Because if they're going for racketeering, like I said before, or sex trafficking, then it's going to be interesting to see what evidence they bring forth, because this is very similar to the Epstein case, being that the federal government is involved as far as the FBI is concerned. And so this is interesting because we were talking about the 14th and 15th Amendment yesterday and talking about how President Trump had signed an executive order to stop birthright citizenship. So the U.S. Supreme Court will hear arguments this week, in a case that is both unusual and potentially seismic in its consequences. The 14th Amendment says that anyone born in the United States is automatically a citizen of this country. It doesn't say that, but we'll read on. And it has been settled law since the 19th century. President Trump is seeking to put an asterisk on that amendment as part of his crackdown on immigration. But before then, the Trump administration is asking the justices to resolve an unusual procedural question. Okay, let's read on. I like it. Okay, and this is coming to us. It's called the Christian Science Monitor, and they are center. So let's keep that in perspective. Just wanted to make it a little bit bigger so you guys can read it. Okay, this browser has lost. Why? Try sharing your screen again. Restart. Ugh. All right, y'all. I'm just trying to be obedient to this wonderful system, because what I don't want to do is I don't want to sound like I'm underwater. I don't want to make your listening experience horrible. So it looks like my microphone is working. Looks like sharing is working right now. So birthright citizenship reaches the Supreme Court. What's at stake? Okay. Well, let's see. So the United States Supreme Court will hear arguments this week in a case that is both unusual and potentially seismic in its consequences. Okay, we read that part. Crackdown on immigration. But before then, the Trump administration is seeking the justices to resolve an unusual procedural question in Trump versus Casa Inc. In 3 lawsuits challenging the January 20th birthright citizenship executive order, lower courts have found it unconstitutional. All 3 issued nationwide injunctions stopping it from taking effect. In what they have described as a modest request, Trump administration lawyers are asking the Supreme Court to narrow the injunctions to the individuals and states involved in what is now one combined case. So I used to, I'm a paralegal by trade, and I've worked with what they call multi-district litigation. And in multi-district litigation, similarly to a class action lawsuit, but different, is where it will take cases from a particular region and it will combine them, and they will try them in a particular court to get a, resolve in the case, right? To get a judgment in that case. Whereas, with a class action lawsuit, it's technically, it has more people and it's everybody from around the country and it's one combined case and you go at it this way. But when you're dealing with multi-district litigation, like I explained, and you're taking it from a region and you're trying it in one particular area, you can take that case that you've got a judgment on and you can actually use it in other cases in other parts of the country. So that's what they're doing here. So as opposed to actually making them 3 separate cases, they are actually combining it in one case. So let's just say the Supreme Court, they come back and they say, okay, the 14th Amendment was for slaves. It was not for these individuals. And you can't just come here, from whatever country and have a baby and call that baby a U.S. citizen. I'm just saying, if they do that, then that would be the judgment on the case. And that's it. But let's just say the case goes the other way and they say, yes, they are allowed citizenship. Then any other cases around the country, they could combine them in certain areas of the country and use that judgment to go forth with that case. So I hope that made sense to everybody out there listening. But this is what they're doing and how they're doing it. It's very smart legally the way they're doing it, because they'll be able to bring in more information from each case and draw sympathy from the court, which is what they're trying to do in this case. But again, you guys know my view from the 14th Amendment. We went over it yesterday. It is not for people to just come over here and have a kid and say, my child's now a U.S. citizen. That's not what it was written for. It was written for the descendants of slaves, for someone like myself, so that I would be a citizen of this country along with my children and in perpetuity. So in effect, the justices are being asked to allow the birthright citizenship order to take effect in parts of the country, but not others. Interesting. The case could transform the power of the judiciary as laid out in Article 3 of the Constitution. More immediately, it also carries profound consequences for immigrants in the U.S. I'll read that one more time. Trump's administration lawyers are asking the Supreme Court to narrow the injunctions to the individuals and states involved in what is now, okay, narrow the injunctions. Got it. Okay. I just had to read that one real quick. Okay. So the order would reinterpret birthright citizenship as it applies to individuals subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. The administration defines this as excluding babies born to parents in the country unlawfully or temporarily. The justices will ultimately be the deciders of the order's constitutionality, but this initial foray also has the potential for real-world consequences. It does. Because like I said, if the justices determine that no, okay, birthright citizenship is not legal, this affects everybody, right? And even though Trump said it would only affect people born here after February 19th, other people are going to be challenged on their quote unquote said citizenship that isn't lawful. It is going to be very interesting how they deal with this. So citizenship is one of those areas we just haven't seen different rules in different places, says Nicole Hallett, director of Immigration Rights Clinic at the University of Chicago Law School. There is some skepticism on the court around nationwide injunctions, adds Professor Hallett, but I don't see how the court could side with Trump administration without creating chaos and confusion. Yeah. Different versions of the Constitution for different states. Okay. Can't change 14th Amendment. It is what it is. It was written for a specific group of people. But they don't want to talk about that. They just want to talk about the words and say, well, it says everybody. No, it doesn't. Who is the everybody that they're referring to? Why is it even there? Without the Emancipation Proclamation and slaves being freed within the United States and them needing citizenship and protection, the 14th Amendment doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. But people don't want to talk about the background and the history. They just want to go forth and do what they want. Can't do that. We have laws. Judges have issued numerous nationwide injunctions pausing Trump administration policies in the past 4 months. Some things some Trump supporters have said shouldn't be allowed. They felt differently during the Biden administration, funneling lawsuit after lawsuit through Amarillo, Texas, presided over by a lone conservative judge appointed by Mr. Trump during his first term. Right. So this goes both ways. The birthright citizenship order is, some legal experts say, a textbook example of when a nationwide injunction is justified. While it's hotly debated whether an individual judge should have the power to make law affecting the whole country, even on a temporary basis, the Constitution is by definition the supreme law of every state. The farmers created the Supreme Court in part to ensure that the law is applied uniformly across the country. If the High Court allows the order to take partial effect, different federal courts would effectively be subject to different versions of the Constitution depending on their location. So, yeah, they need to just say across the board, this is what it is. The law is what it is, and that's it. You can't say, okay, well, in New York, you can do this because that will apply to you. And in Georgia, you can do this because that's how it applies to you. Now, granted, each state has the Constitution, and they are allowed to execute the Constitution in their state. They do. And I'm not sure if everybody realizes this. But here's the deal. You can always give someone more than the law, but you cannot give them less. Right? In California and in other certain states. Let's say you wanted to record someone's conversation. Well, in California, you cannot do it without actually notifying the individual that they're being recorded. If you do not do this, it's not applicable in court. Where in other states, you can record somebody and it can be admissible in a court case. So that's where you're given more than the law, not less. Now, a lot of people out there will say, well, yeah, there have been times when people have been given less than the law. We had Jim Crow. You are exactly right. And it was never challenged again to the Supreme Court that we as a people, right, slaves and descendants thereof should have never had that mistreatment because they actually wrote laws in accordance with the Emancipation Proclamation, giving protections. And we might spend some time maybe next week on some of those documents, and they're dated in the 1800s that I'd like to share with you guys just to show you, yeah, you know, you were never supposed to write laws to cause further harm to freed slaves nor their descendants, but they did it anyway. And because of the power paradigm, I should say, in our country, there was really no one to stand up to the states or the government to say, you can't do this. Now, some people might say, well, that's not true. You know, they stopped doing Jim Crow because they had to, because it was unlawful, right? But there was never any restitution behind it. And that's a whole nother conversation with reparations outside of chattel slavery. But that's where that conversation begins, right? Because in 1965, you know, they had the civil rights movement and it was like, okay, you can't treat people like this anymore. But we had a civil rights law in the 1800s during the time they had the Emancipation Proclamation. So what happened to those civil rights? It didn't change. They just weren't enforced. And that's what's happening. The 14th Amendment has been abused. It was never changed. There was just no one who's been enforcing the law, and it's been allowed to be abused. And that goes back to our government and our legislatures allowing it. And even that goes to the states allowing the abuse. So at the end of the day, in my opinion, who's responsible, right? Because if you're in charge, be in charge, but make sure you're following the law. And you're not. You're just not. So, you know, let's read on, because I had to pause there for a second. So what does it mean to be stateless? Narrowing the Constitution's birthright citizenship clause would also have real world consequences. Parents who were unlawfully or temporarily present in the country would be most affected, experts say. In theory, though every new parent could have to verify their immigration status under new criteria when applying for government documents or benefits for their children, it would likely be up to civil servants to make these new determinations. And I'm from California, and there was a time when if you were not here lawfully in this country, you couldn't apply for benefits. Like I said, I mentioned the 1996 law that said if you came here from another country and you wanted to work here or be naturalized, you could not get government benefits. Well, there were individuals, like I said, when I was coming up, that were here unlawfully and they were trying to gain benefits. Well, they couldn't apply for benefits, but they were allowed to apply for benefits if they had a child here. And that's why they are sometimes referred to as anchor babies, because that baby anchors them to the system. If a woman is single and there's no father in the home, to what the social worker has been told, then they'll get cash aid, they'll get housing assistance, they'll get food stamps. See the trend? But see, that 1996 law said you can't do that. And people were doing this after 1996 in the states. So they were using state resources to fund this illegal activity. And it was illegal because you're not supposed to be getting state aid, right? It never should have happened anyway. But now, we're questioning the citizenship. Okay, so you never should have gotten state aid in the first place. No. But then under Biden, they opened up the floodgates and gave them everything. Like, what are you doing? This should have never happened. This needs to be stopped. And I'm glad that Trump is putting a stop to it because we have laws. If you did not enter the country legally, see, and it's talking about parents who are unlawfully or temporarily present. What does that even mean? That's criminal activity. If you are here unlawfully, you are a criminal. You've come here criminally, under the pretense that if you have a baby here, yay, great, I've got an anchor so I can get benefits. It's wrong. And states that allow it should be brought to prosecution. We do have a few cities that are sanctuary cities and states. There's New York, Illinois, right? Chicago, for the most part. We could bring up California, but they've been doing this for so long. They've always been in that status. They just weren't called that. And yet tax dollars are being used for it because those three states, they're always, saying they have a deficit, maybe more money. Well, why aren't you spending your state money and resources on your citizens? Why are you spending your state resources on people that are here illegally? Deport them. No, you want to protect them. And you want to not support the citizens. You want to tell the citizens that there's nothing here for you, but we're going to hand everything over to people who aren't citizens here. And this has happened. That's factual. So the Trump administration argues that it is unable to create public guidance about how executive agencies would implement the order because of the nationwide injunctions, right? Counter to the administration's goals, some researchers say enacting Mr. Trump's order would actually swell the unauthorized population. If the order is enacted, that group could be 40% larger in 2075 than it would be under the current interpretation of birthright citizenship. According to a new analysis by the Migration Policy Institute, the think tank estimates there were 13.7 million unauthorized immigrants as of mid 2023. So you know how people keep talking about that 15 million number. And I love how the linguistics, they're unauthorized, they're unlawful, they're criminals. Okay, let's keep it 100. Stop calling these, stop. Because you slap the face of the people who are immigrants doing it right. It's a slap in their face. They've done all the paperwork, they've done the right thing, they've gone to all their hearings correctly to be citizens of this country, and you roll out the red carpet for the criminals and you keep calling them unauthorized, unlawful. No, they're criminals. That's who they are. They broke the law. Like, stop protecting unlawful behavior. Like, Christian Science Monitor, I'm calling you to the carpet. Stop that. Stop protecting criminal behavior. You need to take the word Christian off of it. I can take the Science Monitor, but take Christian off of it. Stop that. Stop it. Do not call yourself a Christian and not telling the truth. And you're like, we just want to use flowery language. Stop it. They're still criminals. They're unauthorized. What does that mean? It's unlawful. What does that mean? It's criminal activity. That's what that means. That is what that means. Stop it. Flowery language. I can't. That's just me, y'all. That's just me. And let's take a short break, and we'll, finish up this article, and I'm going to check on my guests to see if they are ready to be with us here on Wednesday, Women and Wellness. We'll be right back. And we are back. Thank you. That was brought to you by Cash to Crypto Society. So definitely check them out. That's Cash to Crypto Society. We're going to finish, plowing through this wonderful news story by the Christian Science Monitor. If y'all were with me in the last segment, I kind of tore into them. I'm like, yeah, be truthful. Just tell the truth. In the most extreme scenarios, critics say the order could grow the population of stateless individuals who have no citizenship in any country. In the US, for them, obtaining an ID isn't guaranteed, though they also can't be easily deported. So that has always been fascinating to me. It's like, okay, they're here illegally. Why aren't they being deported? And I'm not saying they're not, because, definitely Department of Homeland Security, the secretary, she's on top of it. And also Tom Homan, he's on top of, making sure people are being deported. But it's saying easily deported, right? It gets complicated. So the U.S. is not a signatory to the United Nations conventions on statelessness. Neither does the U.S. law define statelessness. That also means there is no structure through which stateless people can directly obtain a permanent legal status. Democratic lawmakers have tried and failed to change this. And the reason why is because we have laws. we do have laws on the books. We do have immigration laws. We do have laws for people to be naturalized. And the reason why Democratic lawmakers have failed is because they are using and abusing the 14th Amendment. They are using and abusing policy that they write to circumvent the laws. That's why we are here where we are. They're just disregarding the law, period. That's what's happening. That's why we're here. So according to one analysis, in the absence of federal data, roughly 218,000 U.S. residents were potentially stateless. Okay. You're a resident and you're stateless? No, you were here illegally and you didn't come through the proper port of entry. You did not apply for citizenship. These fluffy words to me say criminal. Just letting you know. Or at risk of becoming stateless. As of 2017, the United Stateless, a human rights advocacy group, says reinterpreting birthright citizenship would create more stateless people. We're going to read on because my blood pressure. Most stateless people don't have any documents. They don't have any legal identity, says Samantha Sturtley, staff attorney at United Stateless. Because they're here illegally. They have plenty of documentation in their own country. What? Excuse me? Stop that. You're trying to create a situation where people are under a different term, and I'm using that quotes, to say they're stateless. No, they're not. They're criminals. They shouldn't be here. If you applied for citizenship the correct way, you would be a naturalized citizenship, and there is a proper port of entry. We do have laws. Stop trying to circumvent the laws with your NGOs and your groups. And see, these are the same people that will drop those criminals off in the Black community and then turn a blind eye and say, what are you complaining about? Why are you upset? Well, they're not living with you in the gated community. They're not going to your schools with your kids. No, you're going to drop them off somewhere else and pat yourself on the back as you're such a great person. You're not. I'm here to tell you right now, you're not. Oh my goodness. If the federal government is going to overnight bar automatic U.S. citizenship for a new group of children, she says, it seems like there has to be some kind of structure in place. No, there was always a structure in place. These people have always been here illegally. And a lot of times people was like, why are you going to take, if I had my way, I'd take it back to 1965. Oh, yeah. 60 years at minimum. But see, I couldn't do that because, see, in 1980, roughly 80, 81, Reagan gave people amnesty because it was said there are too many immigrants here. We can't deport them all. So let's just do amnesty. And I'm only going to do it one time because we can't do it again. And here we are again. So if you want to take it back to 1980, I'm cool with that too. I'm cool taking it back 45 years. I'm okay with that. If you came over here illegally, you can go home. Because see, there are people here that have been here 10, 20, 30, maybe 40 years. They still haven't applied for citizenship, living in this country illegally, but having all the benefits. You can go home. I am okay with this because we have to start somewhere, because we need to start following our laws if we claim to be a nation of laws. That's all I'm saying. It says to date, stateless in the U.S. has tended to result from a mix of issues, including geopolitical change and quirks in American immigration law. There's no quirks, okay? They jumped the line, they didn't do this correctly, and they're criminals. And that's it. I'm going to stop there because I keep getting triggered by this article the more I read. I know you guys are like, are you okay? Do we need to do a well check? I'm good. I just get very passionate when it comes to our country and our laws and the abuse of our laws by other individuals. I'm not saying I don't want people to immigrate here. I just want you to do it the right way. Because see, when you do it the right way, you're not going to be abused. You're not going to be taken advantage of. But when you do it the wrong way, you will be abused. You will be taken advantage of. And then you'll be looking for, another recourse. from the country that allowed you in here. Yeah, there's that. Nobody's thinking that far downstream. And I think that's what frustrates me the most about how they're going about this in this country. You know, my birthright is in the 14th Amendment. That's my birthright. I've traced my lineage back to chattel slavery. I know I am a citizen of this country and my children and my children's children and so on in perpetuity. I am not going to allow somebody to just walk over the border and get something that was written for my lineage. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Now, if you want to do it the right way and be naturalized, you know, and your children naturalized, and then you establish yourself in this country, I'm totally okay with that. But not coming over here illegally and, in essence, demanding citizenship and having groups like this stateless group demand citizenship for people who are committing illegal activity. You crossed the border illegally. You did it the wrong way. You need to go home. You need to figure it out and know you will not ever get any benefits over here. Your children, no one. You should never be given any type of aid and comfort. Oh, and by the way, that means when you're giving aid and comfort to people that are enemies, which criminal activity falls under that, you're committing treason. So you're breaking laws on top of laws. And at the end of the day, trying to, be sympathetic and say we need to protect people. I can't. Stop it. Stop it. Because like I said, you are the same people that will pat yourself on the back and you will throw all of these illegal criminals into the Black community specifically. And they cause harm to the Black community specifically. And that needs to stop. It truly, truly does. And we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we will wrap up the show.
At all sides, we give bias ratings for hundreds of media outlets. By freeing people from filter bubbles and providing different perspectives, we can all be better equipped to understand the world and each other. So how do we do it? All Sides has
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here on Unfiltered Vision News. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and today is Women in Wellness. Yes, and so thank you again for joining us here on Unfiltered Vision News. We have Wednesday Women in Wellness, and our guest today will be Dr. Asir Newby. So let me get her here on the stage with us. Hey, Doc. Thank you so much for joining us.
I can't hear you. Am I on mute?
You can't hear me. You're not on mute. I can hear you.
Cannot hear her.
And you can't hear me.
Dr. Nichols?
I can hear you. I can hear you. Let me check my audio really quick. I can hear me. I can hear me and I can hear you fine, but I can't hear my guest. So I'm going to remove her from the stage and then I'm going to bring her right back. Okay. Sorry with the technical difficulty. Like I said, it's just me. So I'm like, okay, let me check so I can hear you. I can hear her. She can't hear me. So let's try that again and bring her to the stage. Okay, I'm going to Oh, I can't unmute her mic. So let me try again. Okay, let's try again. Okay, so you need to take yourself off mute. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? No? Yes? You can't hear me? Dr. Asir? You need to take yourself off mute so I can hear you. So you can't hear me at all. You can't hear me? Okay. So she's gonna go out and come back in again. Like I said, we're live. So this is all the behind the scenes stuff. You know, some people do pre-recorded live. I want to do live. I want to jump right in and see what's going on. Okay, so let me try this again.
Hello, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. I'm
Loving
sorry.
it.
You know how it is. We've been having some technical difficulties this morning. I do apologize.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. I tell people, I'm telling my audience, I'm like, look, we're live, y'all. Y'all are seeing everything. Y'all are seeing, you know, the bumps, the bruises, you know, me. I read an article. I got so triggered. I had to apologize to people. I was like, look, I'm triggered, y'all. I'm sorry. Look, you're getting it raw and uncut this morning. But this is our Wednesday Women in Wellness. And I wanted to bring on Dr. Asir. She and we met a couple of years ago during my presidential run. And she's just an amazing woman and she's in the community. And I wanted to bring her, especially on Women in Wellness, because she is out there in the community, making sure that people are not just well physically, but also mentally and spiritually. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Asir and let her finish introducing herself and just tell us more about what she's involved in.
Well, it's a lot to say about who I am. So just to keep it short and brief, I am Dr. Asir, but most people know me as the real Asir. I've been in the entertainment industry for over 26 years now.
Wow.
Started off originally as a model, a featured model in several magazines. I transitioned from I'm still model. I still model, but I transitioned into film and the entertainment industry. Most recently, I am the production manager for a project called a Wu-Tang Experience. And for those people that don't know who the Wu-Tang is, it's one of the most legendary rap groups of all time. And most people, if you don't know who the RZA is, and you don't know Method Man, and you don't know the rest of the generals of the Wu-Tang Clan, if you see the W logo, you recognize it no matter wherever you are. That film, A Wu-Tang Experience, a Red Rocks documentary, we filmed that during COVID. And it is now, we just got the good news that it will be released in over 300 theaters internationally and globally. So just imagine being that little girl growing up in Newport News, Virginia, and then moving to Decatur, Georgia, and now seeing your name on the screen in the opening credits all over the world is just amazing.
Wow.
And now we go and tell the backstory of where they came from, which is the Park Hill Projects in New York. And that project is called Killer Hill. The director, Gerald Barkley, thought it was important to document these stories of where they all grew up in Park Hill community during the crack epidemic.
Wow.
For most of us on the outside, we know about the crack epidemic if you grew up in that time frame, but you don't know how it affected the Black community. We don't always get to see those stories, but he did an amazing job at capturing the stories of the people that survive that time period and those people that did not make it through that time period. Mm-hmm. When we see the Wu-Tang Clan and we see Method Man and we see him flourishing and acting, when we see RZA doing those things and we see the other artists doing what they're doing and making these strides in music and in music history, we don't know what they had to go through to be resilient. And I think that's a good segue to talk about this month being Mental Health Awareness Month. May, we just, May is Mother's Day. It's Mental Health Awareness Month. And our resilience has to come through our mental mindset. And I'm glad you're talking about mental health awareness, because if you were to watch the film Kill or Heal, there's without giving one of the episodes away, but there's a lady in there that says, no, there's nothing wrong with me. Just to paraphrase, she said, I don't suffer any mental illness. Well, how can you not suffer mental illness when you grew up in a time frame of the crack epidemic, and when you were a teenager and you're seeing all of these murders and killings around you, these stories, watching it, you're going to feel some type of, mental anxiety. You're going to feel some type of, emotion. And so I'm glad you're having this conversation. And I think that's a good segue into who I am. I'm also a paralegal. I am also a transformational life coach. I've had to transform myself plenty of times throughout my life's journey due to some type of trauma or change. And so what better platform than to talk about mental health awareness than being on with you today. So thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for the introduction and just sharing about the Wu-Tang Clan, and also, bringing up that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And, especially in the Black community, we don't talk enough about our mental health. It's something that I know a lot of times we've grown up, we shied away from, especially, in church. People will say, well, we'll just pray about it. And it's like, sometimes you need to do more than just pray. Sometimes you do need to go see a therapist. You need to talk to somebody.
Exactly.
That's qualified to help you get through these things. And guess what? It's okay. It's okay. There's no shame in it.
I think, and not to cut you off, but to add to that, it is also when you grow up in a household and your parents say what goes on in the house stays in the house.
Yeah.
And so you develop this mindset of I gotta keep everything in, and I gotta keep it all close. I can't tell anybody. I can't go to school and say I didn't eat last night. And you can't go to school and say my mom beat me really bad last night. You cannot go to school and say those things. So you bottle those things up and you hold them in. And guess what? It begins to stay with you as you get older, and it starts to become a part of you. So what you said was very, very important. We do think we can just pray it away. Like we do. But what if you can't? But what if you can't?
Yeah, exactly. And those are things that, I want to just encourage everybody that's watching, listening, if you are dealing with a struggle, within your household, whether that's mental abuse, physical abuse, or just, sometimes we just need somebody to talk to. I would suggest you reach out to a mental health professional and talk to them, and also get family counseling, because sometimes we forget about the family dynamic that, some conversations are uncomfortable to have, but you need to have them so you can have healthy relationships within your family, especially mentally healthy relationship. Like, again, these are things that we're told in our house, don't talk about these things.
Yeah. And especially as women, like I said, May is Mother's Day, but even the fact that May celebrates Mother's Day and mental health awareness, the two go together. As women, we carry a lot on our shoulders. We're quick to say that the man is the head of the household, but the women truly are the backbone. When you think about it, whether you have children or not, when you wake up in the morning, you jump out of bed, you have a time clock, but guess what? You still be the time clock. I got to get up. Kids, you got to get up. You got to get ready to school. If your husband is not up, babe, you're going to be late for work. Your day does not stop. Your
Right.
day continues to go into the morning. And now you have to be chef. You have to be the chef of the house. So I have to fix his lunch, his coffee. I have to fix the kids' lunch, their coffee. I have to fix breakfast. After that, then you're probably, if you're stay-at-home mom, you're still cleaning, you're still taking care of the baby, you're still running the errands.
Yeah.
Your mental space is constantly crowded by, what do I need to do today? What do I have to do to make these things right? Even if I had to go back to being the wife of kings, they picked women that they knew could be their confidant,
Right.
that could say, you know, that when they needed answers to something, and I can't go talk to, you know, my king's court, and I can't do this, I can't always go to my woman, because her wisdom is going to have me thinking like, okay, let me just make sure I make the right decision. So women have always been, truly, we say the backbone, but we've always been the foundation of the family. But we never take the time to look at, how is this affecting us when we jump out of bed and when we jump into these roles, even going into corporate America. Things have changed so much for us now, that the roles that we play is constantly elevating with the rise of single parents and single moms out here. So we're doing dual roles in the household. Now you have to be disciplinary and everything else. What are you doing to sustain your mental health? Women suffer from depression more now than ever. A good friend of mine, she's a doula here in Atlanta, and I call her the postpartum expert, but she just received the proclamation from the state of Georgia honoring postpartum mental health awareness day, because it's big. I've worked in OBGYN, you know, and it's not like it's just gonna, you know, you're gonna have this baby and you're gonna be happy and it's just gonna be joyful. Some women feel the effects of postpartum depression like right away, you know. Then you deal with anxiety. Women deal with anxiety at higher rates now. I can honestly say for myself, I've experienced that. Relationships, you know, we take on energies because we are energetic beings. All of us are. And so when you're in a stressful situation, your levels are going to go through the roof. Fight or flight, anxiety. Well, what do? We go back to what you said earlier. We don't want to talk to a therapist, or we hold it in. We hold things in, and guess what they do? They fester inside of us. We have to find ways to better manage our health, especially as women. And we use the term self-care, but what does self-care look like for you?
Right.
What does that look like for you? What does that look like for you, Hashaki?
For me, wow. Okay. Well, that looks like, I usually like to try to take time to just be still. And a lot of times people are like, what do you mean? What I mean is, I'm still. I'm not on my computer. I'm not on my phone. I'm not talking to anyone. I'm literally just still. You know, I might choose to read my Bible or just pray, but there are times I just need to be still, be in the moment, reflect, you know, making sure that I'm sorting things out, you know, with myself. You know, did I do this well? Did I not do that well? What can I do better? But for me, that looks like being still. I have gone to therapy, you know, when I got divorced, my first divorce, because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just running. I also wanted to make sure I wasn't a crazy person, because I was like, I want to be in another relationship and I want to be the best me I can. You know, the therapist, he shared with me, he was like, actually, you know, you did a good thing getting out of the relationship that you were in, because you weren't healthy. He goes, even though I don't advocate for divorce, you made a good decision because you weren't in a healthy environment and situation, and it wasn't getting better. It was toxic, and it was unfortunately only going to get worse. So, you know, with that said, I haven't been back to therapy because that therapist gave me some really good tools, and one of those tools was just to be still.
And to add to that, you said something. You said, even though you were still, you still was thinking about some other things.
Yeah.
And so I want to encourage the viewers that when you're still, you try to remind yourself to take control of your mindset. I'm not going to think about anything else. And I usually say, think about your happy place. What's your happy place? Is it, for me, it's the beach. You know, my happy place is the beach. I am from Virginia. I'm a beach girl. Go fishing. Yes, I do. And all of my bougie and uppityness, I do put the worm on the hook and do all of that. You know, it's my happy place. You know, find your happy place and try not to think about those things that got you there in the first place.
Right.
But the number one thing is just breathe. Just breathe. If you don't do anything else, before you just go still, take in those deep breaths, just breathe. Many of us do not understand how to breathe through our situations. When you can just take your time and close your eyes and take in those deep breaths, inhale, hold for 4 seconds, exhale, and then do it again a couple of more times. What you've done is you're telling your body, I need to calm down. I need to be still. I need to take control. I need to control where I am. And every time those other thoughts come in, no, I'm in control. I control this. I choose not to think about this today. I choose not to think about this right now. I will deal with this when I'm better able to handle it. And like you, Hashaki, I know what that's like to be in a situation whereas I myself, as a coach, I'm very transparent with my clients, very much so. I want to be able to connect to you and let you know that I'm not just reading from a book. I've experienced this.
Right.
Like you, I've been in a relationship that every time the phone rang, my heart would just go. I didn't know if it was going to be a good call, a bad call, if I did something wrong. If he needed me to do something and I didn't jump quick enough, what was going to be the repercussions of that? I started having anxiety, and I'm a coach and I know what to do. But again, we're talking about women's mental health. My state of mind was I wanted to please the person that I was with. And that anxiety came about during that situation. But after that situation, that anxiety was no longer there. So I recognized the problem, but then I also had to make sure, what do I do in those situations if it ever happens again? How do I take care of myself? How do I handle the problem? How do I address the issue? It starts with me first.
Yeah.
That is, like you said, just breathe, be still.
Yes.
And then pray and say, show me what I need to do about this.
Yeah. Like I said, that works for me and I use it. So thank you so much for joining us here for Wednesday Women in Wellness. And where can people find you and also, follow you?
Oh, they can. Everything for me is, you could just Google The Real Asir, A''Cire. That is me. They can go to my website, therealasir.com. That's TheRealAcire.com. And everything that you want to see is there. Let me get a special shout out too, because I am at 3 a.m. Studios right here in Decatur, Georgia, and they were very, very gracious. I'm traveling, so they were very gracious to let me just come in here. I also want to thank my producer for Wu-Tang Radio. Yes, I do have a radio show coming out soon on Wu-Tang Radio, and Shamika Bottoms is my producer on that show. So I really want to thank her for that. And I want to say before I get off, that you can catch me right here on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. starting June 8th for our new episodes of Emerging Beyond with Asir. But keep in mind, I am a coach. And if you need me, just go to my website and connect with me, therealistseer.com. And I will see you Wednesdays, June 8th, right here on Let the Truth Be Told Network. Thank you, Sharpie Nichols.
You're welcome. And thank you so much for joining me. And I'll see you soon.
See you soon. Thank you.
Yes, that was Dr. Sear. And like I said, she is absolutely wonderful and gracious. And I'm so glad that she was able to join us today. We went a little bit over, but I'm glad we did because, you know, mental health is something that we all need to care more for ourselves with. We live in such a chaotic world. And a lot of times we forget, you know, to take care of the most important being that we have, and that's us. If we don't take care of us, we can't take care of others. And so I want to thank everybody again for joining me here today on Unfiltered Vision News, and we will see you tomorrow.